Good morning students. In this video class, we are going to discuss the most important concept in this lesson, that is photosynthesis. Photo means sunlight. Synthesis means preparation of food. So, the literal meaning of photosynthesis is synthesis of food with the help of light. It is one of the most fundamental of all biochemical reaction in which all plants synthesizes organic compounds. So, all plants synthesizes organic compounds with the help of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, water from the soil, and in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll pigment, it is producing an organic compound, that is, it produces food. Chemically, photosynthesis is an oxidation reduction reaction. So chemically speaking, photosynthesis is an oxidation reduction reaction. Or we can call it as redox reaction, in which water is getting oxidized and carbon dioxide is getting reduced. That means, now what is the meaning for oxidation? Oxidation means loss of electron and reduction means gain of electron. Now in photosynthesis, water is getting oxidized and carbon dioxide is going to get reduced. Now, photosynthesis is a major and most important biological process by which all autotrophic organisms like plants, certain algae and chlorophyll containing bacteria can prepare their own food by themselves. We can explain photosynthesis with a simple equation. Now, the overall equation of photosynthesis is CO2 plus H2O in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll. Plant prepares C6H12O6 or CH2O, carbohydrate, plus water, and oxygen is liberated as a byproduct. So when you balance this equation, 6CO2 plus 12H2O, then 6H2O and 6O2. So this is the overall equation of photosynthesis. We can understand the entire process of photosynthesis with this simple equation given. Now we are able to see, or we are able to understand, plant uses the raw material carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and water from the soil, and in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll pigment, it produces an organic compound, or we can call it as food or carbohydrate or starch. And not only food is produced by photosynthesis, it also releases much required oxygen as a byproduct. So this is the equation of photosynthesis. Now, where does this photosynthesis occur? Photosynthesis takes place in all green parts of the plant. Especially, they are found in leaves. Leaves is the major site of photosynthesis. Apart from leaf, all the other green parts of the plant. Say for example, when the plants are young, even the stem will be green in color. So stem also contains chloroplast, and stem does photosynthesis, and the floral buds are also involved in photosynthesis. Now, for photosynthesis, pigments play a very important role. Let us understand what is the meaning for photosynthetic pigments. So, we are going to the next one, photosynthetic pigments. Pigments that are involved in photosynthesis is called as photosynthetic pigments. Now it's very simple that those pigments which are involved in photosynthesis are called as photosynthetic pigment. We can classify these photosynthetic pigments into two categories. One is the primary pigments and another one is accessory pigments. Now, what are called as primary pigments and what are called as accessory pigments? Primary pigments is nothing but chlorophyll A. Chlorophyll A is called as the primary pigments. It is otherwise called as universal pigment. Reason? Chlorophyll A is found in almost all the plants. It is also found in the smallest algae, starting from the smallest algae to all the plants in the world. So it is called as the primary pigments. It is primary and universal pigments, and it is also called as the reaction center pigments. Reason? The chlorophyll A pigment has got a capacity to absorb sunlight more efficiently, and they take part in photosynthesis directly. Now, what are called as accessory pigments? Any pigments other than chlorophyll A are normally called as accessory pigments, which includes chlorophyll B, chlorophyll C, chlorophyll D, chlorophyll E, xanthophyll, carotenoid, phycobilin, cytochrome, and so on. So any pigments other than chlorophyll A is normally called as accessory pigments. These accessory pigments are otherwise called as light harvesting pigment. All these pigments are also capable of absorbing the sunlight efficiently, but they cannot take part in photosynthesis directly. They will absorb the sunlight, but they will transfer the sunlight absorbed and they will participate in photosynthesis through chlorophyll A. So chlorophyll A is otherwise called as reaction center pigment because they take part in photosynthesis directly. So I would like to repeat the photosynthetic pigments once again. The pigments that are involved in photosynthesis are called as photosynthetic pigments. Photosynthetic pigments are classified into two types. One is primary pigments and accessory pigments. Chlorophyll A is called as primary pigments, universal pigment. It is otherwise called as reaction center pigment. Reason? Chlorophyll A is formed starting from a simple algae to the biggest tree, the trees that we see around us. So it is called as the universal pigment. Why it is called as primary pigments? Because it is more efficient in absorbing the sunlight. And why it is called as reaction center pigment? Because it can take part in photosynthesis directly. Now any pigments other than chlorophyll A is normally called as accessory pigments. It is otherwise called as light harvesting pigments. Accessory pigments are otherwise called as light harvesting pigments. It doesn't mean that accessory pigments are not efficient in absorbing the solar energy. It can also absorb light energy more efficiently, but if they have to participate in photosynthesis, they can participate only through chlorophyll A. Now, all these photosynthetic pigments are grouped and they constitute photosystem. So, all the pigments, both the primary pigments as well as the accessory pigments, constitute one category that is called as photosystem. So photosystem includes all the pigments starting from chlorophyll A to which includes primary to accessory pigments. Now we have understood this photosynthetic pigments. Now this photosynthesis has got two important reactions, that is light reaction and dark reaction. Let us understand what is the meaning for light reaction of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis has got two important reactions. One is light reaction, another one is dark reaction. Light reaction is light dependent reaction. It is first found out by Robin Hill. So this light reaction is otherwise called as Hill reaction. Now what happens during light reaction of photosynthesis and where it occurs? light reaction of photosynthesis occurs in the chloroplast, that too in the thylakoid membrane, that is in the grana. We have already studied about the structure of chloroplast. In that, we have studied a group of stacked structure called as granum. So this is called as granum, and individual units are called as thylakoids. So the thylakoid has got a lumen in the center and around which many pigments are found. So the pigments are found in the thylakoid membrane. So light reaction of photosynthesis takes place in the thylakoid membrane, where all these pigments will absorb the sunlight and convert the light energy into chemical energy. And as a result, during light reaction of photosynthesis, plant produces two important products. One is ATP and another one is NADPH2. ATP is nothing but energy currency of the cell. Now, during photosynthesis, plant releases glucose, but plant cannot use glucose directly, so the energy will be stored in the form of ATP, that is adenosine triphosphate, and NADPH2 is called as the reducing power. It is nothing but nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate reduced. So oxidized state it will be NADP plus. In the reduced state it will become NADPH2, which is nothing but nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate reduced. So during light reaction of photosynthesis, plant synthesizes two important products. One is ATP, another one is NADPH2, and it takes place in chloroplast in the thylakoid membrane, that is in the granum of chloroplast. Now, what is dark reaction? Now, light reaction, next one is called as dark reaction. Both light reaction and dark reaction takes place in the chloroplast simultaneously. So, dark reaction is otherwise called as Calvin cycle because it was first found out by two scientists, Melvin Calvin. Now, dark reaction is otherwise called as biosynthetic reaction also. Now, during dark reaction, what the plant will do? So, during dark reaction, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere enters into the chloroplast, and we have already studied stroma contains important enzyme. So, with the help of that enzyme, carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrate. So, carbon dioxide is reduced to carbohydrate with the help of the enzyme found in the stroma. Is this enzyme alone is enough for the conversion or the reduction of carbon dioxide into carbohydrate? No, it also requires ATP and NADPH2 already generated by the plants during the light reaction of photosynthesis is also required. So, during dark reaction, plant reduces carbon dioxide into carbohydrate with the help of enzymes present in the stroma as well as ATP and NADPH2 generated by the plants already during the light reaction of photosynthesis. But where is the location of dark reaction? Where this dark reaction takes place? Dark reaction takes place in the stroma of the chloroplast, whereas light reaction will take place in the granum of the chloroplast. Now, we have understood the two important reactions, that is light reaction and dark reaction. Let us understand the factors affecting photosynthesis. Now, there are certain factors which will affect photosynthesis, affect the process of photosynthesis. The first factor, the factors can be both internal factors and it can be external factors. Let us see the internal factors first. So the internal factors are pigments, leaf age, accumulation of carbohydrate, these are all the internal factors. Now, if the pigments and leaf age are related to each other, because as the plant is undergoing aging process, the pigment also will loses its capacity to absorb the light energy. So, when pigments are not able to absorb sunlight energy, then photosynthesis will be affected. Then accumulation of carbohydrate. Too much of accumulation of carbohydrate in the leaves or in the plant will also affect photosynthesis. So these are all the internal factors. Now the external factors which affects photosynthesis is temperature, then light, that is intensity of light, then carbon dioxide. These are all the external factors. Then water, mineral nutrition, so temperature. When the temperature is too high or too low, the enzyme will loses its activity. So enzyme play a very important role in the conversion of carbon dioxide into carbohydrate. So enzyme will become inactive either during the high temperature or during low temperature. Then light. So it is believed the photosynthesis will be very effective between 400 to 700 nanometer. That is between 400 nanometer to 700 nanometer, the wavelength of the light. It will be the effective photosynthesis takes place during this wavelength. So it is called as photosynthetically active radiation. When the wavelength is either too high or too low, at that time also photosynthesis will be affected. Then carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere. The concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is 0.036. It can go up to 0.05, or if it goes more than that, or if it is very less, then photosynthesis will be affected. When all the conditions are favorable and in the absence of water, photosynthesis will not take place. And moreover, all the minerals that is found in the soil also play a very important role. Especially nitrogen is directly related to photosynthesis. If any of the mineral nutrition is absent in the soil, then photosynthesis will be affected. So these are all the various factors, both internal factors and the external factors, which affect photosynthesis. Under internal factors, we have to also include these hormones. So hormones also, at certain time, this abscisic acid, which is a hormone, when it is increased in the plant, which is an internal factor, also affects photosynthesis. So in this class, we have studied photosynthesis, the definition for photosynthesis, the pigments involved in photosynthesis, and the two reactions of photosynthesis, that is light reaction and dark reaction, and the factors affecting photosynthesis. Students, please go through your textbook and learn this concept clearly. Thank you.